David, a dedicated bus driver, was suspended simply for waiting a few extra minutes for an elderly passenger, Mr. Wilson. 2 days after facing an uncertain future, 5 motorcyclists unexpectedly appeared outside his house. Little did David know, this visit would change his life forever. Welcome to Emotional Journeys. Today, I'm excited to share with you a new heartwarming story. Let's begin. David was a simple man, always hardworking and devoted to his job. He had been with the state transportation company for many years, where driving the bus wasn't just a way to make a living. It had become the one remaining joy in his life. At 37, David had faced many bitter personal failures, 2 broken marriages and living with his aging parents, which made him often wonder if he had missed something important in life. Those early mornings when the sunlight started to filter through the window were when David felt most lost, but also when he tried to find happiness in his work. One of David's greatest comforts was the feeling of stepping onto the bus and starting a new day. It wasn't the money or career advancement that kept him going, but the connection with people. The daily encounters with passengers from all walks of life, among them were someone who had become a silent source of encouragement for David, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Wilson was a man in his 70s with white hair and a slightly slow gait. He still worked at a small shop in town, not because he needed the money, but because he didn't want to sit idle. "I've lived too long to do nothing," he would often tell David during their daily conversations. Every morning, Wilson boarded the bus with a steaming cup of coffee, a small gift for David. To others, it was just a simple gesture, but to David, those moments of conversation with Wilson were a great source of comfort. Mr. Wilson wasn't just a regular passenger. He became someone David looked up to like a father. David grew up in a family where love between father and son was a luxury. His father was an alcoholic and abusive. David's childhood was filled with memories of yelling and unjust beatings. His mother was the only one who cared for him, but she was too busy trying to keep the family together to give David what he needed. As David grew older, he learned to close himself off, afraid to trust anyone too much. Those years built an emotional wall in him, making it difficult to be close to others, especially his father. Then meeting Mr. Wilson on the bus changed that. In the warm eyes of the elderly man, David saw the image of a father he never had. The brief conversations about the weather, life, and sports became precious to David. Mr. Wilson would ask about David's health every morning, always offering him a gentle smile, and those moments brightened David's day. On Father's Day, David never forgot to buy Mr. Wilson a small gift as a way to show his respect and affection. One morning, as usual, David left the house expecting to see Mr. Wilson at the familiar bus stop. But that day, when the bus pulled up, Mr. Wilson wasn't there waiting as he usually did. Time passed, and David began to worry. This wasn't normal. Wilson was always on time, often arriving 10 minutes early, and never missed the bus. David stopped the bus even though a few passengers had already boarded and were seated. Some people began to fidget and sigh. Others showed signs of impatience, but David couldn't leave. He looked at the clock. 5 minutes passed, then 10. At this point, a few passengers started complaining, but David still didn't start the bus. He felt in his heart that something was wrong. Then finally, the figure of Mr. Wilson appeared in the distance. He walked slowly, clearly struggling. "Oh my, I thought you'd left without me," Mr. Wilson gasped as he boarded the bus. David sighed in relief, smiling warmly. "No, I couldn't leave without you. You're never late." "Is everything okay?" Wilson sighed, looking tired. "I'm not feeling well today, but my boss still insisted I come to work. Sometimes I feel like I'm too old to keep going like this." Hearing this, David felt a surge of concern. Mr. Wilson was the only friend he had, the one who brought small joys into his life. "You should rest, Mr. Wilson." "Your health is much more important," David said, his voice filled with worry. "Yes, but I don't want to neglect my work. There's not much left for me to do in life, you know," Wilson replied, a hint of sadness in his eyes. After dropping off the rest of the passengers at their stops, David received a call from Mr. Martin, his manager. He was asked to come to the office immediately. When he walked into the office, David faced Mr. Martin's stern gaze. "Is it true that you delayed the bus this morning?" Mr. Martin asked, his voice heavy. David tried to explain. "I just waited a few minutes for Mr. Wilson, sir. He's always on time, but he wasn't feeling well today." But Mr. Martin showed no sympathy. "Just a few minutes. You made many passengers late, and that's unacceptable. You're suspended for 2 weeks without pay," he said firmly. David stood there in shock. He couldn't believe that his kindness and dedication had been punished like this. Returning home with a heavy heart, David didn't tell his family what had happened. He didn't want to worry them, and he didn't want to hear the advice he'd heard all his life about not being too kind to others. 2 days after his suspension, as David was pondering his uncertain future, a strange sound startled him. The loud rumble of motorcycles echoed from outside. He looked through the window and saw 5 motorcyclists parked outside his house. A feeling of unease rose inside him. He stepped outside, and one of the men approached him. "Hello, I'm Samuel, Mr. Wilson's eldest son," the man said with a warm smile. David couldn't hide his surprise. "How did you find me?" he asked, still shaken with confusion. Samuel smiled. "My father talks about you a lot. He told us how you waited for him 2 days ago when he didn't see you driving the bus. The past few mornings, he got worried and asked us to find you." Samuel went on to explain that their family had recently started a motorcycle transport company and was looking for a manager. "My father said you've always dreamed of working in this field, and we'd love to invite you to join us." David stood there, speechless, unable to believe his ears. A wave of gratitude washed over him, but there was also hesitation. "I'm truly honored. Thank you for thinking of me." "My father holds you in high regard, David. He always says you're a wonderful friend." "We'd love to offer you the position of manager," Samuel said sincerely. From that day forward, David's life took a new turn. He officially became the manager of the Wilson family's new transport company, with a salary 3 times higher than his previous job. David not only found a new career opportunity, but he also felt like he had found a new family. His bond with Mr. Wilson grew even stronger. They were no longer just friends. Mr. Wilson had become the father David had always wished for. The new job allowed David to thrive, not only in his career, but also brought him newfound happiness in life. Looking back, the suspension that initially seemed like a setback turned out to be the stepping stone for David to receive opportunities greater than he could have ever imagined. Sometimes, the challenges in life are simply the prelude to better things ahead. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more touching stories. Leave a word to describe how this story made you feel in the comments, and see you next time.